Welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is Stop Fixing, Create. We can get so wrapped up in trying to fix problems. And in doing that, we end up it's kind of whack-a-mole kind of situation. So instead of trying to fix things, maybe we get to create new solutions and new possibilities. And so we're going to talk about that today. But before we get started, let's take a couple minutes to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop, and allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, Rosalind. It's great to have you here with us this morning. Welcome, and welcome to everybody else who's joining us. And we missed you yesterday, Rosalind. It's good to have you back. So today we're talking about stop fixing, create. Stop fixing, start creating. So many of the things that we see as we look around the world these days are broken. So many things are broken. And when we attempt to fix them, so often, I've seen it so many times, that the fixes actually create more problems. You know, they may be well-intentioned, but they end up, because they're not looking at a bigger picture, and because they are really mired in the limitations of what already exists, they often end up perpetuating the problem, if not exacerbating it. And that's not to say there aren't times for fixing, you know, like if a machine breaks, it's probably a good idea to fix it. You know, we've come into this throwaway kind of society, but if we can fix something, that's a good thing, right? To keep it going for as long as possible. But there are systems that we live with that are incredibly broken, and we try to fix them by legislating. And what happens when we often try to fix them with legislating, and as a result of that, we get more restrictions, and there are ramifications to those laws that we might pass, or those limits, or and so it just is a problem built on a problem, when in so many cases the foundational structure is flawed. And I think that we are seeing this all over right now, trying to fix a broken system. And sometimes you just need to start fresh. And I think that if we look at our system, the foundational premises, so many of them are just really irrevocably flawed. You know, so many of our systems are built on a foundation of racism and sexism and discrimination. And even more beyond that is the notion of separation and the primacy of individualism at the expense of the collective. And I'm not, I'm a big proponent of individualism, and I'm a big proponent of finding our own unique passion and expression. And at the same time, we need to be alert to context. Good morning, good evening, Gia. Welcome. It's so good to have you here with us this morning. We're talking about stop fixing, create. So when we're looking at systems, you know, we've talked this week about zooming in, zooming out perspective, and so much of the fixing that we try to do is very zoomed in. It's looking at something and saying, this is a problem, so I'm going to address the problem, instead of looking, and that problem is typically a symptom. And instead of looking at the larger living system and all the impacts that will be created and felt by trying to patch things up. So we're talking about there are certain foundational assumptions that are fundamental to the systems that we currently, that are pervasive in our culture, that have gotten us to the place where we are. And it's not fixable. We need to generate something new. And this is about living not from the past, but into the emergent future. As we have, if we're fixing problems, we're living from the past. We're living with something that was conceived a long time ago and is wanting to perpetuate itself. That's what happens when we fix things. It's trying to keep itself afloat. We can see that with the fossil fuel industry. And we can see that with, beyond that, the notion of our extractive technologies. Even if we look at electric cars, for example, we're still building the technology on the extractive model, where we have to extract certain minerals and chemicals, and we're still raping and pillaging the planet. And when we move into this notion of what's possible, we can become aware that there are other potentials. So we've all heard talk about 0 point energy and free energy. And now with the disclosure around ETs and intelligences from other than human sources, it's come out also that we have had very advanced technologies since the 50s that would have changed the whole course of the world. That it's not based on an extractive model. This is a universe of energy. And if we knew how to tap into the energy that's here, that's, just free floating, without having to mine it, without having to extract it, without having to use all these different substances or damaging technologies, what would that be like? If we recognize that we are part of a greater living system and that our impact impacts that system, we might be operating in different ways. So I don't know if you've looked into any of this anomalous craft kind of information. It's pretty fascinating. There's no propulsion system that relates to anything we're familiar with. It's kind of dealing with gravity and magnetism and energy. And so there are systems that are very, very different than what we publicly know, but supposedly we actually have this technology. We actually have it available to us. We're not taught to think that way. We're taught to think of the earth as a resource that we can farm and mine and extract from. And that's how we deal with people too, right? That's how our culture deals with people. When we look at how we employ people and churn them and burn them kind of thing, where people are just statistics. This is how we work with war, and the strategies of war is looking at numbers and separating ourselves from our connection with one another and with everything. And so the biggest creation that we can engage in is generating new thought, generating a new paradigm. And ironically, it's not new at all. It's really a paradigm that has been common among indigenous peoples globally, where there's a recognition of an animate world, and that there's life in everything, that we're living in a conscious universe, that we're all connected, that the earth is our mother. It's a very, very different from the Western orientation. There's a fluidity of sexuality and understanding, and there's a deeper tolerance and connection and a reverence for ceremony and a reverence for the spirit world, like knowing that there's other forms of intelligence other than our clinically rational thought that has been deified in Western culture, that is so deeply disconnected from heart, where there's just this disembodied mind that is we've come to elevate and revere. So Rosalind says the Navy released the patents for 0-point energy. I could see California building desalination plants for making water. Santa Barbara is already desalinating a portion of their water portfolio. That's really interesting. So California, not just California, but California has licensed water companies, bottled water companies, to be able to be sucking the water out of the water table. And so when there was a drought, these companies like Nestle and Pepsi and whatever were draining the aquifers dry to sell water bottled in plastic bottles that are lasting for hundreds of years, and getting into our water systems, our ground, our soil, our food, our bloodstream, our air. So it's interesting. I'm curious, please. I did not know this about the Navy, and I'm wondering if you have access to whatever it is that they released. I think it's no accident that we're hearing more about 0 point energy and cold fusion and beyond unity energy devices since this public disclosure of alien visitation, because the governments are going to have hell to pay for the world, for the state of the world, knowing that we've had these technologies since the 50s. The world did not have to become what it has become. The whole rise of fossil fuels didn't have to happen. We didn't have to be facing this climate emergency. And so, this is the attempt to use wind power and electric power is really kind of a perpetuation of the same mentality that drove the fossil fuel industry. It's ownership. It's being able to have something to sell. Let that land for a minute. When we talk about being able to utilize the energy that's all around us, that's like the air that we breathe. And we have been so acclimated to a model of capitalism that is voracious. It is a quenchless thirst in our culture. And with free energy, things change a lot. That's been one of the biggest impediments, supposedly, with Westinghouse and Tesla. Westinghouse went with Edison because you couldn't put a meter on the things that Tesla was creating. And so the money factor, the greed factor, that is driven by this notion of scarcity, which is foundational to our structures, drove all of this. It was about being able to make money and to have control. And so what we need to do is to create new models and imagine the world with plenty of water. We can actually, there is currently technology to pull water from the air, to actually draw water directly from the air. It exists. I've seen it myself. You can find it online, in fact, to purchase. These devices. Again, they're devices that you have to buy, but they extract water from the air. And we have ways to be able to be replenishing the water cycle, restoring the water cycle, replenishing the aquifers, regreening the planet by working with nature, understanding nature. You might want to check out, I know I've talked about it before, but water stories. And Zach Weiss started that organization and has been collecting information and teaching people how to do water catchment. He's been trained by the I think he's called the Waterman of India, Rajendra Singh, who's restored many rivers in India. And in the restoration of these waterways, it changes and moderates the water cycle. If you think about water as the blood of the earth, you know, we have been sucking that blood dry. I remember years and years ago, there was a Joan Baez song, and she was talking about an atrocity. It was where people went to give blood and they sucked all the blood out of their bodies, and of course the people died. And that's what we're doing. So, you know, it's funny, I had no expectation of talking about all this stuff today. When I came up with the topic of stop, fixing, create. But it doesn't mean create in a haphazard way. It means create, collaborate with nature, with the living world, to look at how do we live with nature? How do we be part of nature instead of using nature? You know, we have this idea that that the earth was put here for our use, and we have used her irresponsibly. And what if instead, I mean, that's the Western creation story, right? That the animals and the plants were put here for humans to use, right? Or for humans for our advantage. And in indigenous traditions, we're family. We're family with every other living creature, everything in nature, everything that exists. So we get to create new stories, new ways of being, because new creations will come from those new ways of being. And like I said, it's not really new. It's just new to us, Westerners, to have a much deeper humility. You know, it's very interesting, this whole notion of extraterrestrials or interdimensional beings or whatever, these other intelligences that are so much more advanced than we. Maybe it will have a humbling impact on us. You know, maybe we'll be able to find our humility. Maybe we'll be able to waken from our stupor, our trance, and take the actions that need taking. I think it's important that we be aware that we don't go back to sleep or let ourselves remain asleep, that this could be, well, I think it's probably undoubtedly um, one of the, if not the most interesting times to be alive on the planet. You know, recognizing that there are these other intelligences, being on the brink of planetary collapse, being in the midst of the sixth great extinction. We're at a precipice, and there's something very magical about being at that point, that choice point, being at that point of emergency, because as much as there is a potential for death and destruction, there's a potential for miracles, for the unexpected, the unanticipated. We are definitely in uncharted times, at least uncharted in our written memory. And there's tremendous power in that. If we think about quantum physics and the orbitals of electrons and how they're living in one probability field, and energy gets applied and gets applied and gets applied, and then poof, they pop to a different orbital, to a different energy field. And I think it feels that way to me, that we're in these moments of more and more and more compressed energy that is going to power us to this other state of being. It certainly has the potential to. And we get to create the future we want to live into. So that's today's invitational challenge, is to start imagining a future that is not a linear progression of where we're going, where it looks like we're going. That, you know, with the introduction of this free energy thing, it's an emergency, and it's now out in the public. So we're in for some very fascinating times. And that's it for today. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern here on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And as always, it is such a privilege to have this opportunity to share with you and think in new ways together, and be in new ways together. So till next time, so much love to you.